When Christopher Nolan's next epic, The Odyssey, finally hits theaters, you already know what the trailers are going to sell you. A brilliant, tragic hero lost in the deep dark of space, using pure human grit to survive and get back to his family. But there is a massive lie hidden inside all this hype. Pop culture has spent years gaslighting you into thinking Odysseus was the ultimate good guy, the clever underdog, the loyal family man. He wasn't. Not even close. If this movie actually sticks to the original ancient stories, you aren't getting an inspiring space hero. You're getting a cold-blooded sociopath, a ruthless war criminal, and a man who committed an act so genuinely sickening on the final night of the Trojan War that even the Greek gods, who literally ruin lives for fun, decided he was too toxic to ever let home. And the wildest part? He didn't even want to go to this war. To get out of it, he put on a bizarre performance involving a pile of salt, a plow, and his own newborn baby. Let's talk about the real Odysseus. Here is the real problem with how we look at stories today. We love clean, simple narratives. We want the good guys to be completely pure, and the bad guys to be obviously evil. We look at Homer's ancient tale and think, wow, what a beautiful story about a man fighting monsters just to see his wife Penelope again. It feels good to believe that. It's comforting to think that history's greatest survivors are just decent people who worked hard and stayed smart. But deep down, you know that is not how reality works. Think about your own life, your job, or the people who actually win in the real world at all costs. The smartest guy in the room is rarely the nicest guy. Usually, he is the most manipulative person there, someone who climbs over everyone else's backs to get exactly what he wants. By buying into the clean, PG version of mythology, you are completely misreading human nature. You are falling for ancient public relations. Homer didn't write an inspiring story about a hero. He wrote a psychological profile of an apex predator who used high IQ strategy to hide a total lack of empathy. If you go into this new film expecting a pure-hearted survivor, you are going to be completely blindsided by how cold this character actually is. You will miss the entire point of why the universe punished him for 10 straight years. Let's look at the facts, starting with how Odysseus tried to draft dodge the Trojan War. When King Menelaus started knocking on doors across Greece to build his army, he arrived at the island of Ithaca. Odysseus had a great life there. A beautiful wife, a tiny newborn son named Telemachus, and a whole kingdom to rule. He had absolutely zero interest in dying in a muddy ditch over someone else's broken marriage. So he decided to fake a total mental breakdown. When the recruitment officers arrived, they find the king of Ithaca wearing a ridiculous hat, plowing his fields with a horse and an ox yoked together, which makes no sense because they pull at different speeds, and literally throwing handfuls of white salt into the dirt instead of seeds. He acted completely out of his mind. He wanted them to think, wow, the king has lost it. He's useless to us. But a guy named Palamedes was in the recruitment squad, and he was just as sharp as Odysseus. He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just walked over, grabbed Odysseus's tiny newborn baby boy, and laid him on the rough dirt right in the direct path of the heavy, sharp metal plow. Odysseus had two choices. He could keep up the act and slice his own son in half to prove he was truly crazy, or stop the plow and admit he was lying. He stopped the plow. He was caught. He was forced to go to war. Now, a normal person might say, fair play, you got me. Not Odysseus. He carried that grudge across the sea. Early on in the war, Odysseus decided to destroy Palamedes. He forged a fake letter from the enemy Trojan king, hid a pile of gold under Palamedes' tent, and framed him for treason. He watched his own comrades stone Palamedes to death based on a complete lie. That is who Odysseus is. He doesn't just beat you. He ruins your name and makes your friends kill you. And then came the final night of Troy. Everyone knows the Trojan Horse story. That was Odysseus's idea. Super clever, right? But what the history books leave out is what happened after they got inside the city walls. The Greeks won, but Odysseus wanted to make sure Troy could never rise up for revenge. He went looking for Hector's son, Astyanax. This wasn't a soldier. This wasn't a teenager. This was a toddler. Odysseus took that baby, marched him up to the very top of the high walls of Troy, and threw him off the edge to smash against the rocks below. This was not a mistake made in the heat of battle. It was a cold, calculated political execution of an infant. When you realize that, his entire 10-year journey home changes completely. The monsters he faces later, the giant Cyclops, the sea monsters Scylla and Charybdis, they aren't just random bad luck, they are cosmic payback. To actually understand this character before you watch the movie, you have to stop looking at him through modern rules. You need to look at how his mind actually allocates its resources. He operates on 3 brutal principles. Insight 1. Weaponized empathy. The first thing you need to realize is that Odysseus treats human feelings as a weakness to exploit, not as a way to connect with people. In ancient Greece, hospitality was the most sacred law in the world. If you broke it, you invited the wrath of the supreme god, Zeus. Odysseus did not care. He constantly used his deep understanding of how people think and feel to make them lower their guard right before he ruined them. Take the Trojan Horse itself. It wasn't just a big wooden box. He designed it to look like a sacred religious offering to the gods. He used the Trojans' faith and their pure relief that the war was over against them. He turned their hope into a weapon. When you watch the film, look closely at how he talks to his crew. He doesn't inspire them with grand speeches about honor. He figures out their specific fears and uses those fears to control them like puppets. Insight 2. Cheap victory over expensive honor. Before Odysseus came along, Greek heroism was about symmetry. You look your enemy in the eye, you fight with a sword, and the stronger person wins. But that style of warfare was incredibly expensive, high risk, and cost too many lives. Odysseus looked at that old model and realized it was a terrible waste of resources. Why risk a 50-50 sword fight when you can just poison a well, fake a letter, or hide inside a hollow wooden animal? He introduced asymmetric warfare to the world. He valued efficiency over honor. To him, honor was just a luxury for dead men. Look at the 2 options the Greeks had. On one side, you had Achilles, who chose frontal assaults. It was an honorable way to fight, but it carried an extremely high risk and caused massive casualties. On the other side, you had Odysseus, who chose deception and tricks. His risk level was very low, and he lost minimal lives. He picked the low-risk, high-deception route every single time. That is exactly why he survived when almost every other major Greek leader died on the battlefield or was murdered immediately after returning home. Insight 3. The addiction to chaos. This is the deepest insight, and it is the exact psychological trap that Nolan will likely build his movie around. The entire point of the Odyssey is supposed to be a man fighting tooth and nail to get back to his quiet domestic life, his wife, his son, and his rocky island home. But look at his actual choices. Every single time he gets a clear, easy path straight home, his own massive ego or his crew's distrust completely destroys the plan. When he escapes the Cyclops, he can't just sail away quietly. He has to turn around and scream his real name across the water just to feed his pride, which allows the sea god Poseidon to track him and curse him. He tells himself he wants a peaceful life, but he is structurally addicted to chaos. He spent 10 years at war and another 10 years wandering the oceans. He was gone for 20 years. And when he finally gets back to his palace, he doesn't sit down for a quiet dinner. He locks all the doors, blocks the exits, and slaughters over 100 young noblemen in a massive, bloody trap. Odysseus doesn't actually want peace. He wants an enormous canvas to show off how brilliant he is, and a quiet, normal life just doesn't give him that. The real truth about Odysseus is that he is history's very first anti-hero, a man who saved his own life by sacrificing every single person around him, including his own humanity. The writers of this new movie don't need to invent dark twists. They just have to read the original text. If you want to understand the dark, unfiltered reality of these ancient myths before modern media waters them down, click the subscribe button for Mythic Afterlight. Because this trend of sanitizing complex figures isn't unique to Greek myth. In our next video, we are crossing over into Hindu mythology to dismantle Western pop culture's favorite villain, looking at the brilliant scholar, master musician, and devastating warrior king who defied the gods. We're asking the ultimate question: was Ravana truly evil? See you there.